Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Sir Spam28 here bringing you some more World of Warships closed beta action. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at the last of the real money premiums that I have not reviewed, and that is the USS Sims, this lovely, beautiful Tier 7 United States destroyer. Look at it. She's a gorgeous girl. Getting right down into it, you can see on the right-hand side of your screen, the USS Sims is a Tier 7 destroyer with 13,800 hit points, which is pretty comparable to most other destroyers at the tier. Its armor is 6 to 13 millimeters, so not there. The main quirk of this premium ship is, in fact, like the Gremyashi, its main batteries. But unlike the Gremyashi's quirk being a slightly larger main battery, which gives you some more tactical flexibility as far as alpha damage and range is concerned, the Sims' main batteries are unique in the fact that they rotate faster than a spinning top, really, is I think the best way to put it. If we mouse over here, you can see that 180-degree turn time, 5.3 seconds, which is, frankly, ridiculous. It's just ridiculously fast. It's unlike the Warspite with the 72-second 100-degree turn time, which was ridiculous in its own right for being ridiculously slow. 5.3 seconds to spin these turrets around 180 degrees is ridiculous. So what this enables you to do in the game is maneuver as wildly as you want and never have your guns stop pointing at the enemy, is really what that comes down to, which serves this destroyer well. You can see some other stats on the guns, 13.3 rounds a minute, which is also fantastic. 112 meter maximum dispersion at the max firing range of 12.9 kilometers, so fairly accurate as well, but do keep in mind that these are just 5-inch guns. These are just 127 millimeter batteries, so if you're shooting at things at that 12.9 kilometers, you're going to be arcing your shells pretty much straight down from the sky, which makes them very easy to dodge, and which really kind of amplifies that maximum dispersion as well. Max HE damage per shot is 1,070 with a 5% chance of fire. The maximum AP damage is 2,370. I do like to fire AP out of the 5-inch guns at pretty much everything I come across, unless it's a bigger battleship, in which I'll switch to the HE and start raking its decks to try to disable some modules. But for most everything else, I like to shoot AP. Everything else at this tier that you come across, you can, at the ranges that you want to be at, be reliably penetrating with the AP. Again, except for those battleships. Moving on right down the line, as this is a destroyer, it does have torpedo tubes. Unfortunately, this is a U.S. destroyer, so it has the U.S. torpedoes. You can see it's got 2 quad torpedo launchers. They are of the 533 millimeter variety. So, getting up there, but not the biggest that you could possibly have. The reload time, you can see, is a pretty harsh 87 seconds, almost a minute and a half for these torpedoes to reload in between salvos. The torpedo tubes respond rather well, 7.2 seconds on the 180 turn time for them. 11,600 damage, the maximum damage. Again, these are only 533 millimeter torpedoes, so they don't pack that big of a punch, but they do have a very, very speedy rate of 65 knots in the water, which means that you should be able to hit what you're aiming at, considering that these torpedoes only have a top range of 5.5 kilometers. Again, U.S. torpedoes on a U.S. destroyer. 5.5 kilometers, so it falls in line with the other destroyers at, Tier 6 and Tier 7. The Farragut and the Mahan with the 4.5 kilometer torpedoes, but those do pack more of a punch. So, just like those, and just like you've had practice with the Nicholas before it, you do have to get used to using those ambush tactics, using your smoke, using islands, if you want to get the torpedoes to be effective, because you're going to be spotted with a surface detectability range of 7.6 kilometers, at least 2 kilometers before you come into torpedo range, and at least 3 kilometers before you come into, like, effective torpedo range. The air detectability range is 3.7 kilometers, so keep that in mind. If you have any aircraft that are going to be flying within 3.7 kilometers of you, go ahead and turn your AA back on and add your AA guns into the mix, and we'll go ahead and talk about those now. You've got 4 12.7mm machine guns. It's 50 caliber machine guns. You can see those there. These are going to be purely personal defense. You can see the range on those is only 1.2 kilometers, and the DPS isn't very good as well. Your main anti-aircraft capability is going to be these 2 single 20mm cannons, kind of towards the rear of the aircraft. No, the rear of the ship. And you can see those also only have a range of 1.22 kilometers and a DPS of 5. And then, of course, your 5-inch guns count as AA. And those have a range of 5 kilometers with a DPS of 8. So that's where you want to be turning off your AA, because if you have your AA turned on, these dual-purpose 5-inch guns will give your position away within 5 kilometers of any enemy aircraft. But with your AA off, you can shave that air detectability range down to 3.7 kilometers from 5. But you can see that it's not the most impressive array of anti-aircraft guns. You're not going to be shooting down planes unless they're literally circling above you for like 30 seconds. Its maneuverability, however, is fantastic. Maximum speed of 39 knots, which is very fast, and a turning circle radius of 500 meters, which is very, very short. Well, we did it when we looked at the Warships. We'll go ahead and do it again. We'll look at the Grem, and you can see its turning circle radius on the Grem is 630 meters. Even the Minikaze here has a turning circle radius of 560 meters. And to compare to non-premium to 6 destroyer, the Farragut has a turning circle of 560 meters. So 500 meters on the Sims means that this is one of the most maneuverable ships in the game. Coupled with the 39 knot top speed and a very fast 3.5 second rudder shift time, means that you can throw this thing about the water in any which direction and at any which speed you please, which is where having a 5.3 second 180 degree turn time on the main batteries comes in handy, because you can maneuver this ship in such a wild manner that you really need that fast turn time on these main batteries to keep the guns pointed at the enemy as you swing wildly, port and starboard, to try to dodge torpedoes, try to dodge enemy incoming fire. And what this really translates down to, all of these stats, getting right down to it, is that the USS Sims is the definitive knife fighter in the game. It's got the 5-inch guns, so you want to get close anyway. It's got close-range torpedoes to kind of even up the odds. It's got extreme speed and maneuverability advantages, and it's got extreme turret rotation rates to keep your guns on target and firing when you're maneuvering wildly. So, when you get right down to it, what you want to be doing with this ship is getting in close, maneuvering wildly, circling between islands, circling between hard cover, and keeping those 5-inch guns just firing at all times. And if you do have the capability to line up a torpedo salvo on a bigger ship, then go ahead and do so. What that means is that this ship is really good against other destroyers in the game, especially lower tier American destroyers. It's good against the Grem. You do have to be aware that the Grem's guns also fire about just as fast as yours, and they pack more of a punch, but they churn very slow. So you want to use that to your advantage. When you're coming in at a Grem, you don't want to be in a running battle with it. You definitely want to be maneuvering wildly, and if you can, you want to be trying to circle it to keep its guns kind of chasing you. The ship is also very good at destroying pretty much any Japanese destroyer that you come across, even up to tier 10 in the game. All you've got to do is get past their torpedo salvo, which, with your speed and maneuverability, if you get hit by a torpedo in this ship, you're just doing something horribly wrong. And once you get past their torpedo salvo, especially at the higher tiers where their torpedoes take a minute or more to reload, you're home free. Their guns will rotate slower than even the Grem, so all you got to do is kind of keep at an angle to them, keep their guns chasing you, and you should never ever get scratched. The ship is also very good against lighter cruisers, the Phoenixes, the Omahas in the game, the Ubari, if you come across that for whatever reason. Even an Aoba will have a problem with a Sims if you get in close. And even though the Pensacola has the firepower to repel destroyers, if you're able to get the jump on it, it has such low armor that these 5-inchers from, a standard range of, let's say, 8 kilometers in, should be able to reliably penetrate the Pensacola's side armor as well and get citadel hits, allowing you to burn down its health fast as well. The only thing that you're going to struggle with, of course, is the battleships, and the main armament you have against them is your torpedoes. But again, your torpedoes, being an American destroyer, have such short range that you're only really going to be able to go toe-to-toe with a battleship or with a higher class, like a New Orleans or a Cleveland, of course, or Mogami over here, and up from there, cruisers, if you get the ambush off. But you don't want to be tangling with them, and you have the speed and maneuverability to, if you get into a bad engagement, I guess in Atlanta as well, with its massive amount of 5-inch guns. If you can surprise it, you can do well, but if not, you're going to have a hard time. But if you get into an unfavorable engagement with this ship, you can, of course, always just turn around on a dime and speed right back out again. Talking about some of the upgrades I put on this ship, I put on the main battery modification 1. Again, just because the primary way I use this ship is using its guns, and these guns actually do get taken out fairly often, so just having the negative 20% chance of critical damage to main battery, and then the negative 20% chance, or the negative 20% time on the main battery repair is beautiful. I run the accuracy mod, again, just because I'm firing so much, I tend to find that every shell does count. I run the propulsion modification, just because the engine in destroyers, at least the way I play them, tends to get taken out quite a bit, so having that enhanced repair time and just the reduced chance of it getting taken out in the first place is always nice. And then I run steering gears just to reduce that already ridiculous 3.5 second rudder shift time down even more. Now, it is kind of diminishing returns. It's already so low that 20% really doesn't shave that much off of it. Obviously, this upgrade is much more effective on ships that have a very large rudder shift time, because 20% of a bigger number is obviously going to be a bigger number than 20% of a smaller number. It's basic math, but I still run it anyway, because why not? There are other things I could put in this slot, of course. The propulsion modification, just to give you some more flexibility with changing your speeds, and the damage control system. But at the same time, if you're on fire, or if you're flooding, you're probably dead anyway. So I wouldn't recommend that one. But these two, it's kind of a wash which one you want to do. The propulsion probably gives you more bang for your buck, but I think I honestly had steering gear lying around. And hey, might as well get even more maneuverable for those even more knife fighting abilities. So that was a pretty in-detailed look at the numbers of the USS Sim. So we'll go ahead and jump into a game, and we'll see how she performs, and we'll go over some general tactics that you want to be employing. That kind of trickles down to all of the U.S. destroyers. Really, in summary, this ship is pretty much the typical U.S. destroyer, with its guns having taken some sort of anabolic steroid to buff them to monstrous proportions. So we'll go into game and see how she does. Alright, so as we get into the match here, you can see that we have 2 Rangers to the 1 Lexington, so we should have the aircraft advantage as far as numbers go, but the Lexington's planes will do much better against our Rangers' planes. We should have the edge. We've got 2 Amagis to just 1 of their Amagis in the battleships, but on the cruiser front, they have an extra Cleveland, which could turn the tides, and spoiler, indeed it does. At the end of the match, we'll get there. And then, as far as destroyers go, we've got 2 Sims and a Matsuki versus a Fubuki and a Mahan. So the Sims should do rather well in this situation. I like the Sims actually better than the Mahan as far as premium versus non-premium Tier 7 destroyers go. The Fubuki is equipped with good long-range torpedoes, but the Matsuki is as well. So, jumping into the match here. On north, as explained in my map tactics video, I'd like to head towards the center in a destroyer. And we are on this side, so we will be probably sticking around that F6 island area, watching that 5 channel to see what comes through as we enlarge the minimap to give a better view for all y'all and myself. Really, it does help to enlarge the minimap, just to, you know, make things stand out a bit more and have a bit more clarity as far as where the ships are going.
Autopilot mode disabled.
So as we begin the match, we're watching our team deployment, and the Sims is very, very good on north for getting into the center area, either watching the 5 line or watching the 8 line. It's fast, it's maneuverable, it can work in between these islands and in that kind of lagoon area that is F7 on the backside of that triangular island. Its maneuverability really allows it to turn circles tightly in there, and its short-range torpedoes are not hampered by the narrow channels on the 5 line and on the 8 line, so you can effectively engage ships with your torpedoes because they are being focused through a tiny area. So it's a very, very, very good area to take a sims, and you'll see once we get into these islands just how fast and how quickly and how tightly this little ship can turn as we spy him a hand off in the distance, but he's staying pretty safe behind that little spit of land. And you can again just see the kinds of maneuvers that you can pull off. This ship actually drifts a little bit in the water. That's how fast and tightly it turns. Has a little sideways slippage going on. And you can see already that the enemy team is kind of lining up on the 1, 2, 3 line, and there's some ships that look like they're rumbling down the 8 line. Then we've got this Mahan over here, and then a couple of cruisers and a battleship that look like they might be turning down the 5 line. So I'm just kind of setting up in this position, hoping that they do. So I'll be able to launch my torpedoes at them through this little opening between these islands into the narrow channel, and then slip back behind this big island and disappear. I still keep my eyes open for that Mahan, watching to see if he's going to show himself to my guns. But he's not doing it. We've actually got a battleship that's come fairly close, and he's kind of choked himself off in this area, which is okay, but it's not the greatest. I'd rather him be back in, you know, that like G8 area where he can just as effectively be guarding the 8 channel, and he's not limiting his maneuverability. We spied this cruiser was starting to turn around this island and come down the channel, but unfortunately he's run himself aground, which I guess saves himself from my torpedoes, because I was getting ready to launch a torpedo spread right through that little gap, and he takes a while to get himself off the island. So we'll cut ahead here in the video to when he finally does get himself unstuck. That Mahan actually reverses course and is coming into the channel as well, and we go ahead and pop our smoke, slow down so the smoke envelops us, and then fire some torpedoes in this general direction. Now, he's at 6.7 kilometers. These torpedoes only have a 5.5 kilometer range, so the only way these are going to hit is if he actually turns around and starts steaming back towards us, which I'm kind of hoping he will, but it doesn't look like he's going to, so I'll go ahead and start opening up with the guns. But the other good thing about the torpedo spread in that direction is that just that, they get a blind hit on the Mahan. It kind of closes off that gap between the big island and the small island, which means that any ship that was sailing through that gap was going to get hit like that Mahan does. So as we're lighting into this cruiser with our guns from the smoke, getting some good AP hits in on him, doing some pretty okay damage, that enemy Mahan is very suddenly going to break through our smoke, as we have been backing up this entire time, so the smoke completely in front of us. The enemy Mahan is going to break through the smoke, become visible to us, and we're going to have ourselves a close-range knife fight, which is what the Sims is good at. So, put some shells into him, use our maneuverability to turn away from his torpedoes, and look at that turning circle. Boom. Didn't even have a chance. Wasn't even close with those torpedoes. And we're able to get our AP shells into him and sink him. We're greatly helped out by the blind torpedo hit we got on him earlier, which shaved off most of his health and really allowed us to win that fight with ease. So now our team is actually broken through. We've got a destroyer and a battleship on the 8 line that is broken through. Now, if you remember what I said in the map tactics video, if you're on a flank and you see the opposite flank break through, you should also then like race forward to envelop and destroy the enemy. Unfortunately, for these poor sods on the 8 line, the vast majority of our ships that are over on the 1, 2, 3 line, I mean, the entire rest of our team, besides me and these 2 poor sods on the 8 line, are on the 1, 2, 3 line. Do they push up past that EF area and break through, envelop the enemy, and destroy them? No, they don't. They stay back, which means that their fire is not very effective against these enemies that have turned around to defend their cap from the push through in the 8 line. I recognize this, so I'm actually going to start a U-turn fairly shortly here. I do not want to be out where those poor sods are, because they are about to get decimated by the combined fire of the enemy team, which our team is just letting them get away with. They're not pushing up, they're not flanking these guys once they've turned around. They're just staying passive and staying back, and you'll see at the end of the game, that's going to be reflected in the scores of a lot of our battleships that just wanted to stay along this G line and, you know, kind of have a party and not really push up. I mean, they're in a prime position to push through the 1, 2, 3, and 4 lines and envelop these guys, but they wanted to stay back. But what we're doing is pretty much just taking some cruisers under fire, but that battleship's already gone. The destroyer's not going to last very long, so we're not going to stay around in this area either and let them turn their guns towards us. So we get back behind some hard cover, as that was a failed push because it was not backed up from the other flank. And we're going to go ahead and cut ahead here pretty soon to once we steam back towards the 4 and 5 area. So I'm trying to tell my team to push, you know, instead of like coming back towards our cap, they should have been pushing up like we already talked about. But here we go, cut ahead. So once we finally get around this island in the 5 channel, go ahead and set the smoke screen across the 5 channel, just in case any of our ships actually feel like making a run up the 5 channel. Well, we've got lots of planes overhead, so I do have my AA on just to contribute to the team's collective anti-aircraft capabilities. Hopefully to engage these fighters and get them down. And we've got a battleship steaming around the headland, so I start to open up on him. We had the AP loaded, so we give him an AP salvo, but switch over to the HE. As a battleship at this range, the AP shells are never going to penetrate, so we might as well go for module damage and try to set fires. Give him a few what's for, and then start to make our way. We're going to try to maneuver through these islands and get some more spawning information and see what we can see as far as the enemy team goes. These planes are not going to get close enough to us, and those fighters are starting to get a little bit out of range. They're out of our spotting distance now. So we'll go ahead and turn off our AA once again just to regain the stealth advantage. There it is. And we'll move forward as a scout for our team. We are the only destroyer left, so it's really kind of up to us to scout out the enemy and hopefully let our team take some good targets under fire. This Pensacola's on low health, so I actually switched to the AP and started opening up on him. There's a good chance that we can get, you know, 2,000-3,000 damage done. But you can see the maneuverability of the Sims. We're able to just get our ass out of the way and dodge the incoming fire from that Pensacola for now. But as we stay shooting and stay spotted, and those fighters are once again spotting us out, the ones that I stopped shooting at earlier, they're now just kind of hovering over us. We do start to eventually take some fire and take a big shell there. There's those fighters I was talking about. This area is an area that I'd really like to be playing in. And finally, we spot the other destroyer, which is what I was kind of hunting for in this island area. So we start to take him under fire with our AP shells as well. We had taken a big hit from the Pensacola, so about a third of our health is gone, which is not good news for fighting that other destroyer. But he's a Japanese destroyer, so we should be able to get the upper hand on him. These fighters are just being the most annoying things in the universe as they're hovering over me in this area, in these islands. And our aircraft carriers don't want to seem to engage these fighters with anything, so I'm continuously spotted. That's why I have my AA fire on again, just to try to do what damage I can to those fighters. And you can see, though, that even though I've been firing at them for, about almost a minute now, still haven't shot any of them down. We get pretty lucky here, and again, showing off the maneuverability of the Sims, able just to sneak by that torpedo and maneuver around it. The Japanese destroyer got that torpedo spread in as a good prediction, just because those planes were spotting me out, so he could see, you know, my heading. He could see I was coming around that island, and he was able to put torpedoes in there, and they almost did me in, but the maneuverability of this ship, which is really its primary strength, was able to save our life there. Get a turret blown up by the Japanese destroyer, take another big hit from the cruisers back there. Luckily, by the time that we're going to re-engage this enemy destroyer, our rear turret's going to be back operational. And we start kind of a running fight with him. Unfortunately, he's spotting us out, and there's a Cleveland behind him. But hopefully that Cleveland's going to be engaged with a Pensacola that's actually flanked all the way around and tried to push again up the 8 line. That Pensacola is also going to be a pretty special ship, but we'll get to that later. For now, we're in a running battle with this Japanese destroyer. He is a tier higher than me, but again, Japanese destroyers' guns don't fire the fastest, don't turn the fastest. But I'm not able to get my full volume of fire up on him just because these terrain features are getting in the way at inconvenient times. And he's right on the edge of his vision screen, or his detectability range, so he's disappearing sometimes. But now, we've pretty much got him spotted out. I'm starting to put some pretty good fire into him as I U-turn around to keep myself able to be shooting at him. We put some speculative torpedoes just through that channel. Again, if he was going to turn into me or start a U-turn, it might have hit him. But you can see that our AP shells are really starting to dig into his health, and our volume of fire is just something that he cannot contend with. But to keep the pressure on him, I'm actually going to start churning in towards him again. Keep running broadside going, and see if we can't sink him and then get into the cap circle and start to cap. We've got, you know, we're down on ships, but at the same time, if we can get in here, get this guy, and then kind of skirt the southern and eastern edges of that cap circle towards where our Pensacola is, we might have a chance to win this game. You can also see that the time is at 4 minutes and 30 seconds, which is why I'm actually not making a torpedo run on that battleship, even though he is in a narrow area. A, I'm focused on this destroyer. I really want to kill him. Yeah, he's the one that's spotting me out right now. But also, if I turned around and made a run at that battleship, even if I sunk him, there wouldn't be enough time to then turn back around and either cap or try to sink those other 5 ships that are behind their cap circle area. So, with this little time left, I decide, yep, I gotta get into the cap circle, I gotta start capping, I gotta try. This is the only way that we're really gonna win this game, is if I can get into this cap circle and cap. Japanese destroyer pops up once again, so we again take him under fire. And our AP shells, at this distance, you can see the 5 inches are starting to have a pretty big arc, which means that the lead has to be readjusted. Get a big hit into him. Get another salvo off. He is very soon going to start to turn away with minimal health left, pop his smoke, and disappear, which is a crying shame. I don't get to hit him. One last salvo goes out. Those shells, I think, bracket him, and he disappears into the smoke. And instead of chasing him into the smoke, I actually go ahead and pop my smoke and start to turn away again towards that other edge of the cap circle to see if we can actually take a stab at winning this game. Now, back to this Pensacola, who I said was a special ship. You can see right now the 2 targets that he has available to fire on, or the enemy aircraft carrier, the Lexington, or an enemy Cleveland. This Pensacola, unfortunately, chooses to pour all of his fire into the enemy aircraft carrier and ignore the Cleveland until he's killed the aircraft carrier and then start in on the Cleveland. The problem with that is that during the entire time he's shooting at the Lexington, the Cleveland is also shooting at him. So, if you find yourself in that situation, please take out the surface ships around the aircraft carrier before you start in on the aircraft carrier. If this Pensacola had taken out that Cleveland and then started to focus on the Lexington, he would have survived this game, and at the very tail end of this game, you can see what a difference having a Pensacola around would have made. So he's finally killed the Lexington, and now he's starting in on the Cleveland. But by this time, he has such little health left that this Cleveland can very easily take him out with his volume of fire. You can see that the only other thing that's really in position to push me out of this cap is going to be that other Pensacola, who's on very low health. So imagine that this Cleveland was already dead, and it's now the Lexington that our friendly Pensacola is shooting at. That's not shooting back at him. Then he kills the Lexington, and he's in a prime position with no ships shooting at him to turn his guns towards the enemy Pensacola that was steaming into the cap. to take him out. And I can deal with this destroyer if I need to. And then we have the cap area cleared out. Their battleships are all over on the 1 and 2 area. They're not going to get back in time. We have a chance of actually winning the game. Unfortunately, our friendly Pensacola just gets taken out right there by the Cleveland that he didn't want to shoot at while there was a carrier around, which means that I am now all alone with 2 cruisers and a destroyer pressuring me. I take some blind torpedo shots at where that Pensacola last was in the smoke. But you can see he's now entered the base capture circle. So he's stopped the capture timer. And with under a minute left, that means that this game is going to end in a draw. So at the end here, I decide, F it, Geronimo, we're going to charge him. See if we can actually sink him with our little 5-inch guns. Start the dodge his first salvo there, turn into him. I'm trying to turn back the other direction, but unfortunately, his second salvo is well aimed and sinks us with under 30 seconds left in the match. So we did what we could. We tried to take a stab at winning the game. In the late game scenario, with the enemy team the way they were, staying to the open water in the north side of the map, it was really hard to make torpedo runs on anybody. I could have gone after that battleship, but again, doing that would have removed me from the cap and would have made it a draw anyway. So the only course of action I had left to try to win the game was the cap. But given that our Pensacola didn't have his target priority straight, we didn't have enough ships in their cap area to make a difference. So ended up having a draw anyway, but you can see a pretty good game. 333,000 credits earned, which is the premium Sims doing its job. 1,975 experienced earned in a draw. This is running a premium account, but obviously not the first win of the day because this was a draw. So almost 2,000 experience with the premium account earned. 54 hits with our guns. Only 1 torpedo hit on that Mahan. It was the blind hit. 1 ship destroyed. That was also that Mahan. And then 2 criticals done. You can see that the Sims, its torpedoes are definitely a ambush situation type torpedoes with only 5.5 kilometers. And when the enemy refuses to come through the narrow areas, you have a hard time getting them in play. You can see the unpremium experience was 1,317 for us, which was top of the list. Again, we beat that 1,000 mark that I'm always trying to go for. So even in a draw, we did well. Second on our team was the Pensacola with 1,249. And then everyone else on our team was below 1,000 experience, with some real dogs at the bottom with the Amagi and the Sims. You can see that those 2 Amagis and the Fuso all finished in the bottom half of our team, and that's really due to them kind of staying very far back for a lot of the game. They needed a push when the other push on the 8 line broke through. Looking at the damage numbers, you can see we fired 204 shots, 53 hits for 22,874 with the AP, 1 hit for 216 with the HE. That was against that battleship towards the mid-game. 41 penetrations. The 1 torpedo that hit did 7,000 damage, which was, again, what really turned the tides in that knife fight against the Mahan that we had. So, kind of reviewing this match and reviewing the Sims, again, it's great in a knife fight. Its guns rotate so fast and it's so maneuverable that if you can close the distance against enemy destroyers especially, you have a really good time with them. But it's torpedoes only to be used in ambush situations. Would I recommend it? Yes, I would. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.